We will extend our temporary internal border controls to all German land borders.
These kind of actions are unacceptable from Poland's point of view.
These controls must be necessary and proportionate. So, as such, this type of measures should remain strictly exceptional.
We must reduce the number of new arrivals here because we're already stretched to capacity.
This is the end of the common European asylum policy. It is the end of the Schengen area, the end of open borders for the economy.
Welcome to the day. Germany's coalition government suffered a setback today. It was trying to secure opposition support for its efforts to clamp down on irregular migration. Now, the three parties in Chancellor Scholz's government have been scrambling to address this issue in the wake of a deadly stabbing last month, after it emerged that the suspect was a rejected asylum seeker with links to Islamist extremism and who was supposed to have been deported. Now, migration was already a hot-button political issue here in Germany and has fueled the rise of the far-right anti-immigration AfD party. Its strong showing in recent state elections has propelled mainstream parties, including the Conservative opposition, to call for tougher laws. Today, the Conservatives quit cross-party talks, saying the government's ideas don't go far enough. Meanwhile, Berlin's plans to expand controls to all of its land borders are sparking a backlash from Germany's neighbours and from the EU.
German police carrying out random checks on the border with Austria. Sites like this will become more common from next Monday, as tighter controls come into force on all of Germany's land borders. But the new measures are already under scrutiny from the European Union.
The Commission position is very clear. So this needs to be done in line with the Schengen Borders Code. So this can be a possibility, but of course these controls must be necessary and proportionate. So as such, this type of measures should remain strictly exceptional.
Neighboring Poland found harsher words for Berlin's new restrictions. These kind of actions are unacceptable from Poland's point of view. I have no doubt that it is German domestic policy that has led to this hardening and not our own policy against illegal migration at our borders. The German government is under pressure domestically after a series of Islamist-linked terror attacks, including a knife rampage in the western city of Solingen, which killed 3 people. The suspected attacker was a Syrian asylum seeker, slated for deportation to Bulgaria, where he had already registered for asylum. Germany's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser defended the new measures.
We also need the ability to turn people back at the external borders, which is why we believe we must continue to take action there. This is absolutely necessary in order to further reduce irregular migration.
For the government's political opponents, the temporary restrictions don't go far enough. The Conservatives, the far right, and the far left want a harsher crackdown in what is shaping up to be one of the hardest tests yet for Berlin's shaky governing coalition.
Let's pick up a couple of those points with our political correspondent, Leonie von Hammerstein. Welcome, Leonie. So we have the Conservative opposition, CDU, CSU, walking out of talks with the government over these proposals today. What did they feel was missing?
Well, Phil, essentially what was missing for the CDU-CSU was a proposal by the German government that would turn people who wanted to apply for asylum in Germany away right at Germany borders. Now, it's important to note that it's very questionable whether such a proposal would be in compliance with EU law. But the CDU-CSU lawmakers said that the proposals that the government did show them just weren't going far enough and wouldn't actually lead to an effective reduction of the number of irregular migrants coming into Germany. That's what they said. Now, in order to give some context to the proposals that the government did make, one, there were the border checks, the expansion of border checks, border controls to all of Germany's land borders. And then secondly, the German government proposed a way for asylum seekers to make sure that when a person tries to enter Germany who says he or she wants to apply for asylum in Germany, that there will be checks that will happen pretty quickly, sort of in the area of the border still, in the course of a couple of weeks, where these people will be held in detention centers or other facilities with very strict control, and where basically Germany does a check whether that person has already applied for asylum in another EU state, because that is sort of the EU law, the Dublin regulation, that a person needs to apply for asylum in the country of the EU where it first sort of arrives at.
And so if I'm an irregular migrant and I go through all these checks at the German border and they decide that I should have applied elsewhere, what happens to me? What do they do?
Exactly. And then, Germany basically wants to send you back to the country where you first arrived. Now, this, under these Dublin EU regulations, only goes, it requires sort of a formal procedure. You, as the irregular migrant, have the right also, to have a say. It's like a formal legal procedure. And then it needs to require sort of the consent of the member states where you first arrived. So in many cases, this is Italy or Greece, the sort of the border states of the European Union. Now, this is sort of a formal procedure, and what the CDU-CSU wanted was for that to happen very quickly and not go through that formal procedure.
OK, so one of the European Union's articles of faith is this notion of passport-free travel, free movement of people within the bloc. Will Brussels allow Berlin to put up the barricades like this?
Well, I mean, states who are part of the Schengen area, which is basically this area of free travel across borders, do have the right to introduce border checks, but they have to be temporary. They have to be sort of a measure of last resort, and only in exceptional circumstances can those member states introduce these border checks. Now, we've heard that the European Commission has already cautioned Germany that this should be a temporary measure and a measure of last resort, but I mean, we do have to state that Germany already had these border controls in place on 4 of its land borders, and it's now expanding them.
OK, talk us through the figures, Leonie, because it's hard to see how Berlin can convincingly argue that these measures are necessary now because of a few thousand people arriving in an irregular manner, when 2015 saw the country accept more than 1 million.
Exactly. I mean, we've seen that the number of asylum applications has gone down since 2015, 2016. You mentioned it, but that is exactly sort of the bigger context for what is being discussed, is this backlash that has been building in Germany, that has fueled the growth of far-right parties, especially the Alternative for Germany party. The bigger political context is also to regional elections that saw the AfD winning one of them and coming in second in the other. Migration has been sort of at the top of voters' concern, also because of these debates that really have been driven by the AfD in the last couple of weeks. But now, the governing coalition is sort of under a pressure to deliver, wants to show that it's taking a harder stance on irregular migration.
OK, thanks for walking us through that, Leonie, DW political correspondent Leonie von Hammerstein.